Leonardo da Vinci. You know the name, of course. You think of the Mona Lisa, the Last Supper, the ultimate Renaissance artist. But what if I told you that's barely scratching the surface? That the painter we all think we know was so much more. Someone who literally changed the way we see the world. Okay, let's really get into this.
Because that's the big question, isn't it? When you pull back that curtain of fame, who is the person standing there? Was he just a guy with a paintbrush, or was he something else entirely?
I mean, sure, he was a painter, and an absolutely revolutionary one, no doubt. His paintings, they weren't just pretty pictures. They were these deep dives into human psychology, bringing a kind of life to the canvas that was just unheard of. But if we stop there, we're missing the whole story.
What about the anatomist, the guy who drew the human body with an accuracy that nobody had ever seen before? Or the engineer, dreaming up war machines and flying contraptions? And then there's the geologist, who figured out what fossils were, centuries before anyone else. The musician, the inventor. The truth is, he was all of it. He was the definition of a polymath.
So how does someone become, well, Leonardo? His story doesn't start with some fancy privileged upbringing. Actually, it's the exact opposite. He starts with a so-called disadvantage that, funnily enough, would turn out to be his greatest asset.
All right, let's set the scene. He's born in 1452 in a small town called Vinci. As a teenager, he moves to Florence, which was basically the Silicon Valley of the Renaissance. He gets an apprenticeship in one of the best workshops in the city, and by the time he's 20, just 20, he's already a master painter. It's a crazy fast rise to the top. But the real story is in how he got there.
And this is the absolute key to understanding him. His illegitimate birth status meant he couldn't go to university. He couldn't just sit and read the classic texts like all the fancy, well-born kids. This forced him down a totally different path. Instead of reading what some ancient book told him was true, he had to figure it out for himself, by looking, by touching, by experiencing. His textbook wasn't a book, it was the world.
So his university was the bottega, the master's workshop. Now, you gotta understand, a Renaissance bottega wasn't some quiet little art studio. It was a buzzing, chaotic hub of creation. It was a place where art and science and engineering all slammed into each other. For a brain like Leonardo's, it was the perfect playground.
In that workshop, he wasn't just learning how to mix paint. He was learning sculpture, design, carpentry, mechanics, engineering, architecture, the whole shebang. He was being taught to see how the turn of a gear was like the flex of a muscle, or how the math behind a building could be used in a painting. He was basically learning to see the connections between everything.
And this totally unique hands-on education, well, it set the stage for a lifetime of absolutely mind-blowing work. His curiosity just couldn't be boxed into one field. It just spilled over everywhere, completely redefining what people thought was possible in art, science, you name it.
Let's just take his art. Before him, paintings could be a little flat, a bit stiff. He comes along and introduces sfumato, that amazing smoky softness that creates this incredible sense of depth. But more than that, he wasn't just painting what people looked like. He was trying to paint what they were thinking. He obsessed over capturing the motions of the soul, showing their inner thoughts and feelings with a realism no one had ever seen.
And this gets to the very heart of his philosophy, the engine that drove every single thing he did. For him, true knowledge, real certainty, didn't come from old books or what other people told you. It came from experience, from seeing it with your own two eyes.
And he took this idea and just ran with it, everywhere. To understand the human body, he secretly dissected corpses, more than 30 of them, to create the first truly accurate anatomical drawings. He'd see seashells high up in the mountains and realize, hey, this must have been an ancient ocean floor, which was a totally radical idea back then. He figured out tree rings tell you a tree's age. The guy was a scientist, through and through.
Now, how do we know all this? Because the man wrote everything down. We have over 8,000 pages of his notebooks that have survived, and they're just this incredible flood of ideas, sketches, questions. It's got to be one of the most amazing records of a single human mind in all of history.
Okay, so that's the history, which is fascinating. But what's in it for us? Living 500 years later, what can we actually learn from him? How can his way of thinking help us in our own lives?
Well, he called himself an homo senza lettere, a man without letters, or an uneducated man. And for him, that wasn't an insult. He wore it like a badge of honor. It was his way of saying, I trust what I can see and test for myself, not just what someone wrote down centuries ago. And that's maybe lesson number one. Value your own experience.
So this gives us a kind of playbook for living a more Da Vinci life. First, stay ridiculously curious. Question everything. Second, connect the dots between things that seem totally separate. Real innovation happens at those intersections. Third, get comfortable with ambiguity. I mean, the Mona Lisa's smile is famous because you can't quite figure it out. And finally, and this is a big one, learn from your failures. Some of his biggest projects were epic fails. But for him, failure was never the end. It was just more data, another chance to learn.
Maybe the best way to really get his philosophy is to hear it from the man himself. His words still hit just as hard today as they did 500 years ago.
What he's saying here is pretty powerful, right? It's all about lifelong learning. The stuff you learn, the curiosity you feed when you're young, that becomes the wisdom that nourishes you when you're old. It's a call to just never, ever stop being curious.
And this one really sums it all up for me. It's such a simple but deep philosophy. A life that's packed with purpose, with curiosity, with effort. That's a good life. It's not about the finished painting or the final invention. It's about the daily act of trying and learning and making things.
So I'll leave you with this final thought. Leonardo's true genius wasn't just his art or his inventions. It was his ability to see the entire world as one big, beautiful, interconnected system. He saw the branching of a river in the veins of a leaf. He saw the mechanics of a bird's wing in a human arm. Everything was connected. So the question for you is, what hidden connections are out there waiting for you to find them today?